Merci beaucoup, Vincent, pour votre gentille invitation à cet événement. My first time with the HUB Institute Sustainable Mobility Forum, and it's great to be with you, if only virtually today. I want to talk a bit about the big picture from a global perspective, from the European perspective, and I want to come all the way down to the role of the city and the region in delivering on these key objectives. On est ici en France, donc on commence avec Paris and the challenge, the existential challenge that we face as a society, as a continent, to deliver on climate change. And here in the European Union, we're calling it the European Green Deal. It means climate neutrality by 2050. There's no doubt about that. But we also need tough interim targets. And we're going for 55% reduction by 2030. That's very tough, but we're ready to do it. And as I say, it's an overused word, but it is an existential challenge. And I think we're on a good track now. We have the COP meeting in Glasgow coming up later this year. There's good progress, I would say, at the global and the national level to addressing these issues. At the European level, I'll come back to that, but we're ready to take on the increasing challenges of ambition, and we're ready to ratchet up the demands that need to be made on all sectors of our society. At the national level, you know as well as I do, China is moving. China is unrecognizable from the positions it was taking in Copenhagen or even in Paris, I would suggest to you. The US seems to be back on track. Our member states are much more supportive than they were. There's a strong phalanx of member states pushing for further progress, signing up to new levels of ambition, and this is a strong tendency. I would also argue, Vincent, that COVID has accelerated these trends. I'd like you to cast your minds back to September of last year, that long first COVID year, and President von der Leyen made her first State of the Union speech. She had a choice. She could have said, faced with this COVID crisis, we have to step back, we have to take a pause in our aggressive approach to this, but she chose not to do so. She said on the 55% target, some people want it to go further, some people would like to do a bit less, but we can do 55% and we will do it. We are determined to deliver. And in each area of our activities, we're trying to take that forward. Here in DG Move on mobility, we produced a new sustainable and smart mobility strategy in December. Very briefly, it talks about making each mode climate neutral. Each mode has to be sustainable. In the meantime, we have to provide sustainable alternatives and we have to incentivize and promote those sustainable alternatives. On energy, we produced the renovation wave idea, and there's lots of things going on across the Commission. On mobility, we will produce a new urban mobility package in the fourth quarter of this year. So we will also be moving this general strategy down into the urban sphere for the first time, in fact, since 2013. Why is this so important from an economic perspective? Apart from our desire to do right with climate change, is that we have now a chance to do this terrible thing called internalizing the externalities. That is to say, addressing the costs that the user brings to the rest of society in his or her mobility. We've estimated the costs of those to be 1 trillion euros in the European Union each and every year. And when you break those numbers down, it's around 40% environmental costs, CO2 emissions, terrible air quality, environmental damage, noise. 30% of it is due to congestion on our roads, and 30% is the cost of road crashes. So you don't need a lot of imagination to say that if you look at the use, our dependence on the privately owned, conventionally fueled private car in our cities and towns, it is a bankrupt policy to be depending on that for our mobility. We need to move on from that. We need to provide new alternatives for our citizens. And we need to do so, by the way, helping cities develop revenue streams through carbon and congestion pricing, which is no more than bringing the concept of market pricing to the use of this finite public resource, namely our road system. So turning more explicitly to cities and what cities can do, cities are right at the front of this, and regions, of course, are right at the front of this. 70% of us live there already, rising to 85% probably by 2050, 85% of the gross domestic product, 72% of the emissions on just 3% of the land. Cities are where the political energy and ambition is. Cities are where climate neutrality is most deliverable in terms of the policies to address mobility, buildings, energy efficiency, waste management. You could say, well, what's the role of that for the European Union? What are we sticking our nose into this? Member states sometimes say that's a question for us. It is true that there is quite a crowded space to occupy. We have a number of initiatives already relating to the cities across the European Commission. Our goal is to try to bring those together in a mission for 100 climate neutral cities by 2030. And it's my honor to be managing that mission for the coming years. With therefore two big objectives: to find the 100 cities that themselves are therefore going to make a big contribution to the European Green Deal, and to provide a test bed, a home for innovative governance and ideas to deliver on climate neutrality so that all cities can become climate neutral by 2050. Our goal is not to supplant all these existing initiatives that exist, but to harness them, to work with them, to help them add real value for cities, to provide cities, if you like, with much more of a one-stop shop. We are going to work towards climate neutral city contracts, whereby cities will commit on the one hand, and on the other hand, we will try to provide the right package of policy and financial and funding support that cities will need. It's a huge challenge, Vincent, that lies ahead, because if you look at the numbers, a preparatory study prepared by Material Economics estimated the cost to be nearly 100 billion euros just for 100 cities of an average population size of 100,000. So if you extrapolate that to include some bigger cities with more work to do, those numbers get very big and very fast. But the role of mobility in that is central. Roughly 1/4 of those costs needs to go on expanding public transport, electrification of cars and vans, changing our charging infrastructure and building that up to speed. And finally, last but not least, of course, encouraging and building better infrastructure for active mobility, walking and cycling. Let me stop right there. I hope we've still got a little bit of time for questions, but it's a great pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you very much. So the main question I will have will be around how we can, catch up with innovation in terms of sustainable mobility that we see in Asia and what we see in the US in terms of smart and autonomous car. So in Asia, it's mostly around electric, and in the US, it's mostly around autonomous. And also, in terms of energies, how do you see the use of hydrogen as the future of mobility? Thank you very much.
Great questions, Vincent. Very happy to address those. Innovation has played a key part in getting us to where we are now. And there are actually quite a lot of innovations which have been generated, for example, under our Horizon 2020 program, which have already put on the table a lot of those potential ideas already. We've made enormous advances in areas like micromobility in terms of mobility as a service. There are many different options out there. I would stress, however, that innovation in itself is not the only answer. Because those solutions exist, a lot of the things I've described in relation to public transportation or indeed active mobility, we have the technology in our hands. We know what needs to be done. It's about deploying it. We should avoid the tendency to say it's only digital solutions that can work. Digital solutions will play a big part in that, and that's great. And thank you very much to everything you're doing in the HUB Institute to push those innovations and to bring them closer to market. But it's not just about those innovations. You mentioned two areas in relation to developing connected and automated cars and also electrification. And I think those are great examples. Connected and automated cars are often seen as some sort of silver bullet for lots of things, whether it's road safety or personal mobility in towns. I'm something of a skeptic in terms of how quickly that is going to be ubiquitous in our car fleets, whether it's for use on highways or in cities, which I guess are the first two use cases. I think the public is going to want to be reassured that these things really are going to be safe. And they will also have to interact for at least the next 10 to 20 years for quite a long time with conventional cars. And that, if you like, human-machine interface is going to be crucial to finding success. Nonetheless, Yes, a lot of investment has been made and will continue to be made. But if I may, an electrified autonomous traffic jam is still a traffic jam in our cities. I think we have to think creatively about moving away from sole reliance on cars as a way to get around our cities. And while I'm talking about electrification, to pick up your point about hydrogen, I think that's very well made. Hydrogen has sometimes been forgotten about when we talk about the rush to electrification. I tend to see it personally, and I'm no great expert, in phases. I think the first wave of moving away from conventional fuels will tend to be on electrification, and we're going to try and back that up with 1 million new charging points across the European Union, including in urban and suburban areas. But hydrogen's coming up fast and offers, I think, a number of really great possibilities which we have to follow up. It's kind of like the old adage, you can't try to play golf with one club, and we shouldn't. We're going to need to use lots of different techniques and different modes, frankly, to bring us towards salvation in terms of sustainable urban mobility.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for your support. I hope to talk to you soon in real life.
I appreciate that very much. I hope to talk to you and to see you all in real life. This is such an exciting seminar, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the results from it.